And I'm delighted to announce that the recipient of the 2022 Frank Costa Leadership Award is Corrina Eccles. And I invite... There you go. I was picking up off the floor as I walked up the stage, one of your leaves. Corrina was the first to say that, and I'm sure she'll say, I don't know what she's going to say, that it's not just about celebrating the individual, it's about celebrating the community. And the work that Corrina does is something that obviously we recognise and acknowledge. But we also recognise that it's not just about one individual, even though the award is being given to that individual. And it's about the work that we collectively continue to do to make Geelong a better place. Corrina is a proud Wadawurrung woman who lives and works on Wadawurrung country. She's based in the Geelong office. Her role is Cultural Strengthening General Manager of the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation. They are a registered Aboriginal party under the Aboriginal Heritage Act 2006. Corrina is a well-respected advocate and leader in the community and has a passion for supporting First Nations people with heart, hands and voice, particularly for children and young people to connect with community, culture, feel included, grow strong with their identity and to know that they are and where they belong. Corrina's journey and connection to Wadawurrung country started with her grandmother and being guided and mentored by elders and respected men and women in the community and her family. Over 25 years in the Aboriginal organisations on Wadawurrung country, Corrina has extensive knowledge and experience in community support and advocacy and in building awareness of Wadawurrung and our First Nations community. She has a graduate certificate in family therapy. She has a Certificate 3 in Revival of Victorian Aboriginal Languages, Cert 3 in Children's Services. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here that you've done as well. Corrina's often seen walking alongside professional and government people. She's often at events that we're at, is often the person that's doing the Welcome to Country, and we've got to know her very well. She's volunteered for the community for over 25 years, assisted Surfing Victoria with their Indigenous serving programs, and she's coached netball, football, basketball, managed a dance group and much more. In that time, Corrina has engaged with thousands of First Nations children and supported them with participation. Her home is known as Community Home, and the door has always been open to support community and supports them during times of need. Corrina has served on a number of boards. She has been a Director of Barwon Water, on the board of the Gordon TAFE, on the Advisory Committee for the Barwon Regional Partnerships, on the Geelong Football Club Reconciliation Action Plan Advisory Committee, Geelong Ports Community Advisor, Bells Beach Advisory Committee, and an active member of a whole bunch of other committees across our country. It's a formal recognition that we make today. Corrina, I have here for you this certificate for you that represents the award of the Frank Costa Community Leadership Award for 2022. And I'm delighted to be able to present this to you today. And then I'm going to invite you to say some words in response. So thank you so much. I have an extraordinary large bunch of flowers to present as well.
I'll have to put a seatbelt on that once.
Good day. Righto. Well, all over to you. You right? You ready to go?
Yatni, thank you. Oh, absolutely shaking. Yatni, thank you. As a Wadawurrung woman, a mother of two, a grandmother of three, I acknowledge my mum and dad and my 2 sons being here today. It means a lot. They have watched the many sacrifices and the personal journeys for me to be who I am today. Their footsteps of my 2 boys have always been alongside me, their ears always listening to me, and their eyes always watching me, being instilled with the same values. So one day I know they will be holding up to their cultural obligations. I stand here on Wadawurrung country, my ancestors' country, accepting this award. Our country is over 1 million hectares that we today are recognised under the Victorian Aboriginal Act as the rightful registered Aboriginal party. Our country includes the lands up to the Great Dividing Range north of Ballarat, from the Werribee River to the coastal waters directly south and east of the Yuyangs. I acknowledge Wadawurrung CEO Paul Davis here today, supporting us and your ongoing support to Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation and us as members and family. Wadawurrung refers to country of the people who belong to the water. Wadawurrung knowledge, language and footprints have been embedded in these lands for tens of thousands of years. From our ancestors that walked before us, our family lines and elders of today, and I acknowledge my dad and Auntie Mary, and continuing generations that are committed to our present and our future. Elders take on the cultural obligation of leadership in our communities. When I think of the word leadership, our word is elder. They have led on these lands for thousands of generations. In mid-1800s, this changed. Invasion started and greed and conflict were here on our country. It was upon us so quickly. Our people decreased in population through disease, death, harm and greed. Our people had no rights, no voice was allowed, no language to be spoken, no one acknowledging, respecting or appreciating the thousands of generations that belonged to the land, nurtured the land. Absolutely no recognition of Wadawurrung people. And it's very sad because Wadawurrung people, Wadawurrung elders, they were the first teachers, the first leaders. They were astronomers, architects, midwives, doctors. All of what we all have today here in our professional, family and community and social lives, Wadawurrung people had sustained in their families, communities and structures for thousands of years. This devastating history that I share, it needs to be shared. We need to continue to have a voice to educate all on the stories and what took place on this land and country. And that is what brings me to my own journey. What could I do different in my journey that my grandmother and my dad did not have a voice to do? My own journey of identity has given me the spiritual fire to be brave, to have a voice and educate all of the past. The challenges that First Nations people still face today. The generational trauma still being felt and carried in our hearts and spirits today. I am blessed that I get to live on my country, my family's country. I know who I am and I know where I belong. And that belonging is so deep when I am barefooted on my country or soaking my body in our Wari salt water. But many First Nations people are still finding their connection. And I hope for all First Nations people to be able to be proud to say their identity and be respected and not challenged. This happens to us daily. Many people are challenged when they stand up and say their identity. People carry their own bias. We have to undo people's bias. My hope has been for resilience, for our survival today. Hope was lost in the hearts of our ancestors. Their spirits broken. And I acknowledge the brokenness of one person here with me today due to past policies and acts, and that's my dad. I acknowledge that my dad was wrongfully taken from his mother with his other siblings. His mum, my nan, who was the most humble, beautiful, caring and loved woman, she should never have had her children taken. So what is leadership when I reflect? Why am I standing up here receiving this award amongst a room full of aspiring leaders? Well, I reflect this in many layers. To me, leadership is 1, professional leaders, 2, community leaders, 3, family leaders. When I think of inspirational leaders, I think of my nan, a family leader. All she conquered and still opened her heart, home and arms and greeted all with her beautiful food, her beautiful smile and her beautiful spirit. Whenever I found struggles in leadership in what I choose to do, I would go out to my nan's nursing home and I'd find strength in holding her hand. I've not been able to do that for 18 months. I've been blessed that my parents showed me family and also community leadership. They endlessly volunteered in all sporting clubs in 3214 postcodes, from managers to presidents to coaching, transporting children, to being foster carers, and they still are today in their late 70s. And I know you don't like me telling your age, Dad, I'm sorry for that one. I continue this family legacy, and I've volunteered for over 20 years. It's actually more than that. I was 15 when I first coached a netball team. Coaching, umpiring, managing, transporting kids in community and giving tirelessly to sport in the 3214 areas where I lived for some time and grew up in. I then moved down the surf coast and I found myself still volunteering, and I volunteer and teach Indigenous kids to surf. And one thing when I think of leadership is that every child say to me when I get them on a board, but I can't stand up, and I say, you can, and I'm going to assist you to do that. And it is nothing more warming in your heart than to see a child catch their first wave. I have pushed thousands of children onto waves for their first time. It is really rewarding, and that, I feel, is leadership. The 321 postcode, the place I was raised and supported and strongly connected to sport. Without the community leaders in these areas and community leaders across all these sporting areas and community organisations, we would see children miss out on these opportunities. And these sporting places offer more than just the sport to many children, and that I've seen happen with my own children. It is more than a sport. These places put their arms around our future generation. As a child, these were the foundations and values that I was blessed to grow up with. I was too young to be aware that I would carry the values of how I was raised into who I am today. Professional leadership was number 3 that I mentioned. Professional leadership, I believe, requires lived experiences. It requires being brave, maintaining yourself, being humble, holding compassion, particularly through the storms. There is not such a word as I in team. Empowering and bringing all along with the journey. Having a voice, and this region has many inspiring professional community leaders. Christine Cousins, not here today, is an inspiration to me. She always hears, she has ears to listen, and is brave all she strives to achieve. Elaine Carbines, retired now, but still engaged and advocating and endlessly sitting across many community advisories across the region. Roxy Bennett, who took me across to New York to represent Wadawurrung people. To Sarah Albin, who I grew up with and played netball with. We use each other in the space that we hold in our own leadership. I could go on and mention many leaders. I acknowledge the many First Nations women who are brave and lead in this space. We are always a minority and often that only voice around the table. And I acknowledge Sis Marsha here today. I acknowledge Sis Julie here today. I acknowledge the likes of Auntie May Owen, endlessly advocating for better outcomes for our future generations. I acknowledge Auntie Mary here today, who has been by my side for 3 years now, and at one stage it was me and Auntie Mary holding up the fort at Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation office to get through COVID. Her mother was the founder of our corporation and did endless work to prove who we are. Again, leadership with passion. I acknowledge the late Frank Costa. 10 years ago, he interviewed me to be in his book called Geelong in Our Own Words. He asked of 20 people to share stories of leadership. I asked, why me? And here I am today receiving his award. I say yatni to him and his family for their leadership. As a young girl, growing up in 3214, I was fed those fruit and veggies. I crossed that big highway to go over to Costa's and buy an icy pole. So 5 years ago, I found myself opening an office in Geelong. With a key, I placed it in the door. I had no idea where I was going to head. But I was brave enough to do it. I had the support of our strong elder, Uncle Brian, who wanted me to do this. He felt I was a person that could bring a Wadawurrung office to Geelong and be a culturally safe space for our people and start building partnerships and relationships. So in moving forward, I will continue to be courageous and take risks. If an elder asks of me to do something, I will do that. The Pugh event was one example. The appalling discrimination, racism, and personal attack all over social media was absolutely horrific, absolutely devastating. Many people said, how do you conquer this? How do you continue to do this? But I was not backing down. Leadership is about personal values and the way we find our way to keep the fire alight when others are throwing water on our fire. I hope we would have 200 people attend and support that event. We didn't have 200. We had 2,500 people. I acknowledge the Surf Coast Shire for their support in being brave and allowing us to hold this event that was for our people speaking on our country. If I wasn't brave and allowed the racism to drown me, the event would not have gone ahead. I would not have thrown anyone else in that space. I would wear the pain knowing that it'd be worth the gain. I am absolutely humbled by being nominated and receiving this award for recognition of the work, commitment and endless passion I have to make a better future for First Nations people. For the children of our community to know their culture and identity is a strength. All First Nations children need to grow strong and proud in who they are. The thousands of years of their ancestors that they will represent, just like I do, and hold those cultural obligations that I continue to do and my family continue to do. And for all First Nations people continue to do. I acknowledge that I don't stand here as an I receiving an award. I stand here and receive this award on behalf of my beautiful family and my beautiful work team and work colleagues, the beautiful community that I get to work in, the beautiful Wadawurrung community, the many generations of the Wadawurrung community. There is not a day I don't receive an inbox from a community person or a worker at Wadawurrung asking for some advice or some support, and I always reply back with that support. So as I stand here, I acknowledge you all. I acknowledge the many community leaders that have walked alongside me on my journey, the many that I have deeply listened to and learnt from. I acknowledge Maxine here with the bright pink jacket who has been my business coach, and many things that I've taken on board. And I encourage all women in this space, sometimes we can't do it alone. Reach out to people that have walked before us. They really provide some really strength to women in leadership. So I thank many of you for being part of my journeys and chapters, all my past colleagues, and all the community children that I've supported along their journeys. I love seeing them now in leadership roles and giving back to the community as mature young people. I do what I do, giving my time, my heart, and my hands of strength to create a better path for the next generation. For our next generation to be brave and strong and be inspired to be the best version of themselves. Yatni again to the person who nominated me, which I don't know, to the Costa family, and to the Committee of Geelong for this award. And to reflect, when I find leadership drowning me, like I said, I would go and hold my nan's hand. She was a strong Wadawurrung woman. As I can no longer hold her hand, I now reflect with writing my own quotes, and I have these quotes in my office and behind my computer that I read and remind me of what I'm doing and where I belong. So I want to end with one of those personal quotes that was on the back of my wall when I had to put this speech together. I pulled the post-it note down to show you my post-it note quote, but I've actually left that. The quote says, "As the sun rises on country today, to the sound of Pawang, you have a day to be the leader you want to be. It is not with yesterday's skills and tools. When the sun sets, yesterday is in the past. Every day we rise with the sun. Be brave, grow, and do not fear change of the unknown." This is your journey. Life is a book of chapters. Keep creating chapters and filling them with characters along your journey and making a better journey for the family and community who will know your book and your chapters and forever go back to those pages. Yatni Bagubada, thank you and take care.